Hi, this is Wes Fryer, and it is June the 25th, 2014. These are answers to some questions posed by folks at iPad Media Camp in Loves Park, Illinois, and this is going to be part one of two parts, and I'm going to tackle the first 12 of our 25 questions in this presentation. So the first question is, how do I face the challenge of having only one iPad in a class of 31 juniors? And I would say using the iPad as a tool to amplify learning. And we're going to be talking about quick edit video today in iPad Media Camp in day 2. We're going to learn about making ebooks tomorrow. And in the first day, we talked about narrated slideshows. So certainly using the iPad potentially to be able to duplicate yourself, just like I'm doing here, in creating a narrated slideshow that you can post online that students can watch, before class, after class, you can show during class, but having the opportunity to really amplify learning and take short videos, as well as have students create products where they take turns not only using their iPad but also using their device, because we'll be talking today about paper slide video and other kinds of projects that can be a BYOD type of project, and students can use their own devices. Question 2 is, please explain how to get out of private YouTube. So when you share a video to YouTube, you have 3 different options. It can be public, it can be unlisted, or it can be private. And all of those settings can be changed in the video manager of YouTube. So when you log into YouTube, you go to the upper right corner and you click on your icon or avatar, and there's an option for video manager, and we'll be practicing and showing that today. And I recommend that you really do that on a laptop or desktop computer. It is possible to have the iPad in Safari or Chrome or another browser show you the full desktop version, but by default, the iPad, when you're looking at YouTube in a browser, not in the app, defaults to a mobile version that doesn't give you as many choices. And so that's sometimes a little bit confusing. If you go down to the bottom left corner, you'll see an option that says desktop version, and then you can, view the full version. But when you jump to the YouTube application itself, the YouTube app, that is basically just a consumptive app for watching YouTube videos. It doesn't really let you edit your videos or change any of those privacy settings. So you got to be in the video manager on a laptop or desktop basically to make those changes. The next question is, how can I make math vocabulary more interesting? And actually, I'm going to I forgot to put a picture in for that, so I'll answer that one along with the QR codes. I think that anytime we get students creating content and having elective choices to tackle different topics, like different questions, then that can be something that's more interesting. So even just creating a narrated slideshow could be a way that students could tackle their vocabulary, and they could find different real-world connections to those words. They can find examples, connecting it to visual literacy. The question this photo is for is, what are some other ways elementary teachers can use QR codes in the classroom? And you can certainly Google for presentations like this one called QR codes in the classroom. I have seen teachers using QR codes for scavenger hunts. I'm not a huge fan of Teachers Pay Teachers, and that's kind of a topic for a different day or different presentation, but there are some great resources that you can get, and my wife actually bought a scavenger hunt there that was a QR code scavenger hunt. You can use a QR code at any time when you want students to quickly get to resources. I used QR codes the last year when I did centers with my students, and so each center had a little QR code with a title over the top, and so students were able to get to a page that was on my Google site that had more instructions about things that they were going to do there. So there's all kinds of creative ways. I'd also mention that our literacy coach used QR codes with a wonderful, hallway presentation of student work. Our students had been studying The Lightning Thief, and they were talking about Greek gods and goddesses, and they had done research about that, and so they recorded their voices with audioboo, and then made QR codes that connected to each one. So they had their artwork on the wall and then a little QR code next to it, and it's sort of like a bridge between the analog and the digital, and the parents and other students who came by could scan those codes and actually listen to students giving their report. We've also had our gifted and talented teacher have students, same kind of thing, record a small presentation about an object that they created that was in our showcase, and then in the showcase there's actually a QR code, so again, people can not just see the object that the students created, they can actually hear the student talking about it, discussing it. Kind of makes it like a museum tour a little bit, and those are probably my favorite uses of QR codes, when it's, not just getting to a website or content that the teachers created, but you're getting to student work and you're using the QR code to amplify student work. But there's all kinds of ways that you can use a QR code. You can just really think about it as a shortcut to a link, and you can have other information in there, but it's usually most powerful when you link to something on the web and some other content there. The next question is, do you have any particular apps to recommend for PE teachers? And what do you recommend that you use to show the breakdown of a skill? So my favorite Twitter user and educator is Mr. Robo when it comes to PE apps, MRO. BBO. I should have put his address here on this page, but his name is Jared Robinson, and he's a PE teacher in Australia, and his website is the PE Geek. You can just probably Google PE Geek or Jared Robinson, and he's got a bunch of different apps that can be used for PE, not only for documenting what students are doing in PE. They can even, if they have their own devices, they can use them to be able to, gather data and document things. I think it's great to be exploring some of the different apps we have now that connect, like the wristbands that measure how many steps you take during the day, and all these health monitoring kinds of things. The expense of that is such that it's not going to be something that probably all your students are going to be able to do, but you're going to be able to potentially have that and show that to students, and being able to connect data to exercise and to nutrition is gigantic, and I think that's most of this starts with personal use. And so I'd recommend checking out the Fitbit or some of those other kinds of products and seeing those kinds of linkages. Jared Robinson's website and apps are awesome. In terms of breaking down a skill, I think it's best to just do it in the context of creating a product. So the products that we're talking about, an iPad Media Camp, a narrated slideshow like this one, a quick edit video, an ebook, those are three really good products, and you can take a look at some content that you teach in your curriculum and you share with students, and you can create some of that content, but they can also create it. And certainly a quick edit video, something that's we take really quickly and share, is probably going to be the easiest thing to do in PE, because it's going to require less in the way of post-production, like I'm doing here with this narrated slideshow. So the next question is, you're cash-strapped in your district. The only iPad I can rely on is the one I've been issued by my district. How do we make sure that projects using technology don't become just another way of separating our haves from our have-nots? So I've got this digital divide photo to, kind of illustrate or think about that. The digital divide is absolutely there and present in virtually every classroom, every school. And so we need to be very careful about the assumptions we make, even with regard to internet access. And I see this happening in my own kids' schools in Oklahoma City, where teachers just assume, kids have access to the internet, they have access to a web browser, and that's not the case for all students. So I think this gets to the idea of redefining what the basic requirements are, the basic, minimum supplies are for a classroom today, and that's changing, where we might have thought about providing a textbook and paper and pencil and a desk, and a room with lights. Today, I think providing access to the internet, not only during class time, but also later, providing opportunities for students to have access devices in the library, if they've got a place for them to get online after school. I think that ultimately all of our schools are going to be one-to-one, and we see some schools really innovating and moving in that way. The state of Iowa, to my knowledge, is the forerunner of that nationwide. Something like 60% of all districts in Iowa right now are one-to-one, where every student in every school has their own device, and it varies as far as when they get to take those home. So we're in a transition time when these devices are still very new, and many leaders don't recognize the importance of that. And it's essential that schools step up to that challenge, and we as educators need to be advocates for that, not only demonstrating the positive potential and power of these devices to help learning and to support assessment and to help with student engagement, but also for the development of literacy skills and the kinds of workforce skills that everyone needs today and is going to need in the future to be successful. So schools need to step up and not assume that all the kids are going to bring their devices. That being said, there are some ways that we can use bring your own device projects, and I think the paper slide video project we'll do today and day 2 will be a good one that hopefully you can think about, because even if every student doesn't have a device, when kids can partner up or work in groups of possibly 3, but I like 2, then quick edit video projects with their own devices can become more of a possibility. All right, the next question is, can you please go into further detail on why public sharing is beneficial? I hesitate publishing on blogs among my coworkers, so I'm really cautious and see this as potentially risky. Sharing is so important because it's the way we are inspired. It's the way we learn. I mean, if you think about teaching and learning and education on a basic level, it really comes down to sharing. There's a wonderful TED Talk that was given by David Wiley, who is in Utah, and he's a really big advocate for open educational resources, or OER, and open learning. And I love what he talks about when he says, sometimes we talk about sharing our stuff, and our inner 2-year-old comes out and we say, no, it's mine, I won't share it. So I hope that in this 3-day iPad Media Camp, you're experiencing some of the value of just being able to see other ideas and other voices. Being able to share, doesn't necessarily mean the world can see it. What we're doing on our kidblog can be done privately, but there's so much benefit to being able to see what's happening in other classes and having your students potentially get feedback from other individuals in other classes. And as a teacher, there is just so much wonderful benefit to being able to be inspired by other teachers. I'm going to mention the K-12 online conference, hopefully today and several times before we leave. That's a conference that happens in October of each year, and it's one that's been going on for 8 years. It certainly taught me a whole lot about the power and benefit of sharing, and there's a lot of examples, and I think that's the best way to get your head around why should we share in public, is to see examples and to hear stories. There's another project that Alan Levine, who I mentioned yesterday, he created the 5-card Flickr site. His name is on Twitter is Cogdog, and it's like the topic is amazing stories of sharing or something. And it's just different people sharing quick videos about how their lives have been transformed by sharing. So that's definitely something great to check out as well. Next question is, can you only use QR codes with a website or app with a link? What if you wanted to have a code for center directions? Does it have to be connected to a web page? Well, you can connect a QR code to just text, but I've found it to be a lot better or in the best sort of use to go ahead and connect it to a website, because you can then change the website, add content, add links, add other things. And then we talked about a home base yesterday, so creating a home base website for your class on a Google site or another page, I think is a wonderful thing to do. It's free to create, and you can connect those QR codes to those links, but you don't have to. You also can create QR codes that just have textual information. So the next question is, how do you create a digital-based project in a time and content-constrained classroom when all students do not have the same access to technology and the teacher's iPad is the only one guaranteed in the room? Well, this is a good question about sort of BYOD, or bring your own device projects. And I think taking a survey to find out what students have access to a smartphone, which can not only take pictures but record video, is a good step in the right direction. Today in day 2, we're going to be talking about paper slide videos, which are projects that can be used with any device that can record video. And we also can do projects that we take pictures of, 5 photo stories, and projects that involve taking images. If you've got a computer lab, you can find ways for students to be collecting information with their devices and then editing it and putting it together in the computer lab. We talked on day one about educreations as a narrated slideshow website and app that works in the computer lab as well. So we have to get creative. Ultimately, I think schools need to provide devices for students to be able to do those kind of things, but it's a challenge, and bring your own device applications or projects can be one way that we address this. The next question is, what's the easiest app for making recordings with pictures and stories for primary students? I'm going to refer you to the narrated art page of Mapping Media, and you can just Google Mapping Media to be able to see that page. And I've got a list of some different apps. There's one called, I think it's just called Show and Tell. I'm not saying the name of that right. But anyway, you're going to see a list, and there are going to be links to that. Audioboo, which is the app we used on day one, is really my favorite, and it's very easy for primary age students to use as well as older students, but there are some other ones. Draw and Tell, I think, is one, but it's not a free app, so it's going to vary on your budget as far as what you can afford, but there are several different choices and options listed there on that narrated art page. So the next question is, how often do you have students use audioboo, kidblog, or educreations, and when are you first introducing new apps to your students? I don't do this every day, but a lot of times when we're doing activities in class, we'll try to document our learning. And so using, kidblog, taking pictures, and then posting those with a paragraph or a few sentences, using audioboo to record some reflections. Those are things that we did several times throughout the semesters last year. I did educreations with a class of fifth graders last year, but my favorite, what I used with my STEM students, was Explain Everything. And I'm going to introduce that earlier in the year, and I'll probably introduce that in the context of an engineering design project that we do. And so it's something that I introduce to students by showing them the basics. So taking, about probably 10 minutes at the beginning of the class to show them how to do that, and then turning them loose with instructions, with a rubric that provides them with a script, with a storyboard, and some structure for the kinds of things that I want to see them share in the project. So the next question is, can two teachers be using Air Display on the same network at the same time? Yes. Air Display, or it's also called Air Server, the one I'm using, allows for the mirroring of the iPad to the projector screen or the television, whatever your projection device is. And you can definitely have multiple teachers in multiple classrooms doing it. It just does affect your bandwidth that you have locally on your network. So your IT department or your technology department definitely needs to plan for that, and they're going to probably, need to increase the amount of bandwidth that's available, because Air Display and that AirPlay technology takes more bandwidth, and you don't want to bring your network to a standstill by not planning for that. The last question in this slideshow is, if you're just starting to use iPads with the whole class, what would be the first 3 apps you'd propose using in the elementary classroom, the middle school classroom, and the high school? And my answer would be the apps that we're using in iPad Media Camp. So the educreations and Explain Everything apps from day one, the camera app, the YouTube Capture app, and the iMovie app from day 2, and in day 3, the kidblog app and the ebook creator app, Book Creator from Red Jumper. Those are my favorite apps, and that's why we are using those in iPad Media Camp. So by creating products in these 3 days and successfully seeing, what those can look like and what it takes to create those products, hopefully you will be able to take some of these apps and get started. And any one of those projects is a great place to begin using your iPads with your students. For more information about these and other topics, I'd invite you to go to iPadMediaCamp.com, and you can click on the curriculum link where we've got links to these and other frequently asked question narrated slideshows, lots of curriculum and resources. You can also follow me on Twitter. I am W. Fryer, Wesley Fryer, on Twitter, and you can always check out my blog, which is Moving at the Speed of Creativity, speedofcreativity.org. Thanks for watching.